I just got back from a 30-mile ride and I am blown away. Just lifting the handlebars about an inch completely transforms the way this bike feels. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be putting on some import bar risers on my CB500F. These ones, again, made in China, but the machining quality on these is actually excellent. I don't see anything on here that indicates poor workmanship or quality. All the chamfers are very consistent. The only thing that I noticed that I didn't really like was that on one of these, I think it was this one, the threads towards the bottom were a little chewed up. So all I had to do was chase those out a little bit, and they're smooth enough to work now. These raise it up, I think it's about 30 millimeters, about an inch. But they will also move it, obviously, backwards a little bit. The fasteners, I was actually quite surprised at the quality of the fasteners. They're nice and heavy. They don't feel like the cheap import fasteners that feel like they're made out of Play-Doh. These feel like good, strong fasteners. And for the 20 or 30 something bucks I paid for these, I think they are actually pretty good. So let's go put them on the bike. But of course, it's not just as easy as bolting it on. It's never going to be that easy. I have to worry about the runs of these cables and hoses and wiring. So over here, I've got some fasteners from the parts I've taken off. I've got my, general tools for taking stuff apart. I already have the seats off and the fairings for the left-hand side of the bike off. So, as a side note, if you ever get any weird electrical problems, check right here first. It's under the rear fairing or rear cowling panel, because this is all the grounds on the bike, or for the most part every single ground, so check that first. All right, back to the task at hand here. As you know, on these bikes, all the wiring goes in front of the triple tree, down behind the fork, and then either back into the engine or over into this area where there's some more electricals. This is an evap canister that's for emissions. The cables that go up to the left hand grip for your light and your horn and your turn signal come through into this this black junction here. There's a rubber piece going over it to reduce water ingress. This can't move any further, so everything that we need for slack is going to come after this. My thought is, because this is the wiring right here, goes down that way, there isn't enough slack to just keep pulling it towards the handlebars as they move rearward, up and aft. So I'm thinking of putting everything on the rear side or the aft side of the triple tree. When you turn the handbar all the way, I will have to be careful that it doesn't get pinched, but I think if we can keep it closer to the shock tube and further away from the center pivot point, I think it'll work just fine. And that goes for everything except for the brake line. I probably have enough on the throttle, so I may not have to move that. Clutch, I'm 50-50 on, but the wiring for both sides will need to be moved to the aft side of the triple tree. This is the right-hand side of the bike. Here is the relay box. It is behind that front right-hand cowling. So if for whatever reason you want to carry enough stuff on the road to repair electricals, you definitely need your 5mm Allen wrench, because that's the only way you're going to be able to remove this panel to get at your relays. So the good news here is that there is enough slack with the bars excuse me, there is enough slack here on this wiring with the bars at full lock to the left that I think I can squeeze out the little bit that I need without putting too much strain on these wires. If worst comes to worst, I can always remove this and zip tie it up higher around this piece of frame to give me a little bit more. As you can probably tell, the bike looks quite a bit different. I removed the windshield, and when you do that, the whole headlight and gauge assembly falls off, except for the wiring harness, which attaches way in the back there. So I just used some of my bungee cords to keep it from its face falling off. And then I had to remove this 12 millimeter head, looks like an M8 bolt from the triple tree clamp to take this clamp off to be able to give me the room for both the brake and the wires. So I'm gonna probably spray a little bit of silicone spray in there to move the wires up and the hose up. And after that, I think I'm ready to unbolt these and see how far back I can get it to see if I can get those risers in here. Quick update, I finally got these rubber bushings, rubber isolators free. They are glued on, so you have to be very careful about how you try to break these free. I'm gonna start out by only doing these two, because the less of this I can do, the better. The way that I found it easiest to get these unglued and unstuck is to use a very small screwdriver and some silicone spray and just carefully get the screwdriver in there, wiggle it back and forth. You'll hear some cracking as the glue breaks. I have to be very careful. Rubber brake lines can be very delicate, and if you puncture it or even push too hard on it and damage the integrity of the hose, that can lead to pretty much your braking system failing. And whether you like to think about it or not, the brakes are the most important part of the entire bike. So don't do this unless you feel very comfortable working on something like this. Otherwise, you might crash into something if your brakes fail because you damaged the brake line. So be very, very careful. Anyway, so once you can get the screwdriver all the way through from one side to the other. This is tricky to do one-handed. Give me 1 second. So once you can get your whole screwdriver through like this, keep spraying some silicone spray in there and then work it around, wiggle it back and forth, twist it, and eventually the glue will break free. Just go very, very slow. If it takes 15-20 minutes for you to do just one of these, then that's how long it needs to take. If you try and rush through it, you will very much risk damaging your components. So there we go. These are both free now, and I can move the hose up. I think I finally have created enough room here to where I now feel comfortable trying to bolt everything up. This kit comes with 2 different size bolts. The longer ones go through the body of the riser and then to the fork or into the triple tree, and the shorter ones then clamp down on the handlebar. However, since you're reusing the top caps from the OEM, you can reuse the original fasteners. You just have to make sure that they will clamp down hard enough, because these pockets and the risers are not as deep as the pockets in the original triple tree. I won't be torquing anything down yet fully. I just want to get things aligned first, and then I can take it apart and do the final torquing. So here's the moment of truth, if it'll fit. Well, it gets up there, but it isn't exactly happy about it. But I'll get the top clamp on here and then see how it feels. All right, I'm gonna get this thing bolted back on because it's just going all over the place and it's really irritating me. All right, everything is completely installed now. I think these actually look pretty good. It matches the style of the bike for the most part. The black matches the bars better than it matches the triple tree. And you know, it doesn't quite fill out the entire lower clamp, but you know, what do you expect? This is tapered, this is not. Everything has surprisingly plenty of slack. I didn't have to reroute anything. I just had to give myself some slack from what was left down there. It's about as far as you can go. Don't go any taller than this. Otherwise, it really isn't going to work at all. The brake line is a little tight. I'm going to keep massaging the brake line. You can also see it's kind of pinching here when I go full lock to the right. All right, take that back, sorry. Not full lock to the right. Just between the steel support for the headlight housing and the shock tube. I don't know exactly how I'm going to keep that from interfering, but I will figure out a way. And I want to make sure it's not going to rub against things. I think I have plenty of slack down here for when the forks are at full extension. But I'll be monitoring everything very closely, especially with the front brake, being that I used some metal tools to break some of that adhesive loose. I'm going to be very, very careful with this whole thing. Another thing I'm going to have to do, I already rotated the brake and the clutch forward, so they were kind of up here. I rotated them down. On this side, you can see that the best. You can see this almost looks like it's pointing upwards, and it kind of actually is. But I'm going to be rotating that throttle, the throttle control, the throttle housing here, maybe rotating that down as well. And then after that, I'll put the windshield back on and then take it for a test drive. I'm pretty excited. I think it already is going to feel a lot better than it had before, being that they're a little bit closer to me, because I always felt like it was right in the in-between point where if the bars were further away, it would be a comfortable tuck. But if the bars were closer to me, it would be a more comfortable upright position. But they were just in that weird middle point where it wasn't comfortable to tuck, and it wasn't comfortable, I couldn't extend my arms far enough to sit upright. So things I'm gonna have to check for now. I'm gonna go into my service manual, find the torque for the handlebars, find the torque for that clamp down there, which is why I haven't fully put this back on yet. And then anything else, find the torque for these since I readjusted those, and I think that should be it. Then put the fairings back on, the shrouds. Some sport bike people might complain that these aren't fairings, but it doesn't really matter. So there we go. I think it's going to look pretty good. I've got all the torque specs written down here. The upper tree clamp is 22 Newton meters. The handlebars right here are all 27 Newton meters. The clutch, this side is the brake. The brake and the clutch clamps are 12 Newton meters. The standard torque values for 8 millimeter, well, they're actually M5 with an 8 millimeter head. Those are all 5.2 Newton meters. And the fuel tank ones up here, because I undid the front ones, those are 10 Newton meters. So I'll get that stuff all torqued up and reinstalled. With very little drama, everything went back together very smoothly and everything torqued up properly. I did have to adjust the angle of the brake again and the angle of the clutch just to make sure it was ergonomic. And I did actually roll the brake back a little bit, only because the sight glass was getting a little low, and I don't fully understand the inner operations of this specific master cylinder, and I don't want it to suck in air if it's tilted in the wrong direction. I can't imagine that would happen, but I don't even want to risk it. I have plenty of clearance with the controls and the shrouds and the tank, and it puts me in a much nicer position. I wouldn't call it night and day, at least sitting here in the garage. I'll have to get out on the road to really say for sure. But I think it turned out looking real good. And I'm actually really happy with them. Overall, the job didn't take that long. I had to start and stop because I have other stuff going on, but in total, it probably took me about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, just because I was trying to figure things out as I went. So let me know what you think there. I really like it, and I'll keep you posted for how it turns out after I put a few miles on it. I just got back from a 30-mile ride, and I am blown away. Just lifting the handlebars about an inch completely transforms the way this bike feels. I know that's a cliche, but it's seriously true. I can sit properly upright now, which I could never do before, and it makes this thing so much more comfortable. I can't even begin to explain how much better I feel about the bike. And not only that, this is the first thing I've done to this bike that has really dramatically changed the feel of the bike in a positive way. Everything else I've done has just kind of made it feel more the same, because I haven't done anything major. But yeah, it's awesome. And I do remember I haven't even shown this bike running. So here we go. I think it sounds pretty good. Not too loud, but just burbly enough and loud enough to have fun with it. So, thanks for joining me. Until next time, bye.